Hey guys, Luke from A Taste of AZ. On today's episode, we've got Lawrence from Provision Coffee. Provision is making some of the Valley's best coffee. You can find it at coffee shops all over. Lawrence has an awesome story to tell, so let's jump into it.
Lawrence Jarvie, welcome to the show, man. Welcome officially.
Thanks, man. It's good to be here. Another day in Arizona. In our record heats. I'm ready for a new day.
Yes.
But hopefully that kind of just keeps going downward, because I don't know about you guys, I'm pretty exhausted from trying to water my plants a little bit extra. Everything just is like dying everywhere. It's crazy.
I gave up, man. I gave up. They all died. I did my best. Yeah.
Yeah. My wife was not giving. She was not throwing in the towel. So I'm still like half leaning and half dead, and some look like they've had too much water and they're gonna fall over. So
yeah, it's that balance, man. It's that balance. So have you been doing that for a while? Have you had a garden for a while, growing your own food?
Yeah, I grew up ironically on a farm in New Mexico. So I was born in Las Cruces, and my grandfather was a big farmer, did apples and pecans, and then local farmers market kind of store. So I mean, it's crazy how you don't know these things as you grow up, and then as you get older, you start to realize like there's a part of who you are comes from your past, both good and bad, and that's one of those like cool highlights of like, oh, it's interesting how I love to cook, and I love food, and I love looking at where it grows, and I think we have a unique culture here in Arizona, so it's nice to see how many people are paying attention to the details, and we have these conversations a lot between different owners and philosophies. John Buford and I have that conversation quite a bit from AZ Wilderness, just about really the ethos of our companies and trying to be really just thoughtful through the different steps and who we use, why we use them, where things come from, how we approach our team with that, and kind of tell that story. So yeah, I've got a bit of a green thumb, and I'm a sucker for growing food. It's been this season just because it's been so hot. So I'm kind of excited to start doing some planting, and we bought a new house through this crazy COVID thing, which I did not see that coming. And I've got a really nice little plot on the side of my house that my wife's given me the thumbs up to basically do some fun stuff. So it's amazing when you grow things, you take a little seed and it starts to like flourish, and like, even if it's just lettuce. I remember the first time I grew lettuce, I was, my gosh, I've got lettuce for months.
Yeah.
I was like, there's no way. And it's crazy to see. I mean, I remember cutting romaine, and it literally was in my fridge for like 3 weeks. And I'm like, this stuff's like incredible. So yeah.
Unlike with the store stuff, where you get it and it's already kind of going bad, right?
It's terrible. Yeah, it's terrible.
Yeah. So what brought you to Arizona from New Mexico?
So we moved in California when I was younger. So I ended up growing up in Cali most of my, like, from 5 to 27. And then I played golf professionally. So not your traditional food and beverage guy. But I'd always worked in food and beverage. This will be my 24th year. I've worked in any from slinging drinks on Mill Avenue. I used to work at a place called Robbie Fox's back in the day in 2010. And then prior to Arizona, I worked in French cuisine. I did private catering. I worked for the PGA Tour doing private stuff for different events in California. I worked at a golf course. I worked, it's just like all these different things throughout the years just really kind of led me to, have that kind of background. But I moved here specifically. One, it was cheaper. I rented a house for $900 on Hunt Highway and Gilbert Road. Don't ask me how I ended up way out in Egypt.
That's way out there, right?
It's Egypt. Like, it's that tipping point before you get into native land. But it was great. my brother and my college roommate and we were able to split a 3-bedroom house for $300 a piece. And we were like 2 minutes from a golf course that we were able to practice at, and had a really great facility. And the head pro was super nice to us. And we only paid like $1,000 for a membership for the whole year. So it was a great place to practice and kind of get back into, get into the local scene, which was the Gateway Tour at the time. And then kind of travel around the country. It's a really good, place to navigate anywhere in the U.S. pretty fast with direct flights. So it was a big kind of it was a roadmap. I'm like, oh, I could work with this. So, but that, that wasn't the plan.
Never is, right?
No, I got as close as you can get. I just started playing again a couple years ago, which has been really nice. I hung up my sticks for a good almost 7 years. I got into a car accident in 2009. It was my second car accident, and I had what they called a skeleton effect. So the first accident that I got into was really, really bad, and ended up getting some nerve damage and a minor brain injury, and kind of just like all these little tiny things that kind of over time would get worse. And that led to accident, and essentially I got addicted to narcotics, and it was wild. Nobody ever wants to do that. It's not like, hey, sign me up, I want to be addicted to narcotics. It was part of the doctor I was seeing. I mean, that stuff's just so dangerous. I mean, I was doing Norcos and Vicodins like they were Skittles at one point, and thankfully for me, I had one of those life-altering, moments. I'm a believer, so I've got a faith background, which is a big part of who I am as a person. And I was sitting at a light at about 5:30 in the morning on Arizona and Hunt Highway, and I fell asleep. And I don't know how long I was asleep for. I woke up and my foot was on the brake. Nobody was injured, and I wasn't pulled over or going to jail. And that immediately, it was like, Lawrence, you need to change your life. And so I just kind of fully submitted, I cold turkeyed the narcotics, and kind of began to dig back into, who I was as a person. And that led to, next step of me and my coffee journey, which was really interesting. So that was kind of like, a really big transition for me, going from a professional golfer to, basically jobless, and kind of trying to figure out what I was going to do at 27.
Is that where being a pro golfer was the direction you wanted to go? Like that was what your mind was saying?
I mean, I had the financing behind it. I'd spent a good amount of 3 years. I had a swing coach. I had a psych coach. I had a personal trainer. I had 4 or 5 different kind of really, put together a team that was essentially supporting me in that process. So it wasn't just a hobby. It was a profession for me as a professional athlete. So, I'd spend 60, 70 hours a week training, and then with hopes to jump on some of these tours. I mean, there's no personal guarantee in any of that stuff. It's the matter of, how good can you get, and then how can you perform under pressure? And golf
consistently,
is one of those sports,
right?
Yeah, consistently, like 4 days in a row, and it's not for the faint of heart. I was living out of my car when I would go to some of these trips, and, I didn't, it was just crazy to see, there's a lot of mini tour guys that can relate to me because they all kind of go that route. And there's a lot of them here in Phoenix because it is a hub for, it's affordable to live. And it's also, the job in golf, you can play part-time and hopefully get a break and, maybe get on a tour. Oh, it's telling us our internet connection is unstable. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
You went now. It popped up for a second there. Yeah, but you're good.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was, no, you're good, man. You're good. So that was the path you were going down, and then big change happened. And you said that's when your first step into your coffee journey began, or?
Yeah. So I was actually, there was a church by my house. It's called the Grove. And I'd driven by it probably, over a couple hundred times. It felt like going to work, and I just had this like incredible draw that I was supposed to be there. I didn't know it was a church. I didn't really understand, what was going on. And one day I decided to pull in, and it was like the first day of the rest of my life. I actually didn't even want to be there, but I knew I was supposed to be there. I had like this really strong feeling. I'm like, okay, I was young in my faith and trying to figure that out. And so I said, you know what, what can go wrong? I'm trying to pursue a better lifestyle for myself. And this is a good place to start and see where I'm at. The next thing you know, I start going to church there, and I volunteered. I had basically, before I became a professional golfer, I was on my road to be in ministry. So I was enrolling to get my MDiv, which is a master's in divinity. And I was really passionate about, being a pastor, and wanted to, basically, some people would call it, to just be with people. That's really what hospitality is about, and it's why I have so much passion for it. But it wasn't the road for me. And so anyways, I get back into church, I start volunteering, and the next thing I know, they're like, hey, we've got this coffee shop, and we don't know what to do with it. We've got this idea. We know you have a hospitality background. Would you be interested? And I was like, I guess. They're like, well, we'll pay you $100 every Sunday to organize volunteers. And I was like, $100 okay, that pays my rent. So I was like, yeah, great. What can go wrong? And so I kind of jumped in. And when I started, it was just a Sunday, basically like a church snack bar that served coffee and had like, Red Bulls, and it was just a very eclectic. There was snacks for kids, and I'm like, oh my gosh. Okay. So I started like stripping stuff away. I had my first specialty, when I was on Mill Avenue back in 2010. It was probably February of 2010. And I just kind of started falling in love with the craft side of coffee. And I would go there every, once or twice a week just to kind of hang out. Loved the kind of grunge Seattle vibe it had. And I had traveled the world. So I've been around a lot of coffee shops. I'm like, this is super unique. I love it. Well, then I kind of, became really good friends with the previous roaster, Paul and Jason. And so when I got into the coffee shop at the church, we were serving like Boyd's or Costco or Folgers. It was something really bad. Yeah. And I knew from a hospitality standpoint, I was like, if you guys want this thing to be successful, and it had, mind you, it has an espresso machine. It was set up for a coffee shop on a very low budget, but it was able to actually produce a product. I just, for permission, I just changed the coffee. So I immediately became a wholesaler of Cartel Coffee, went through training, and we were kind of off to the races. And the real telltale is we had an actual donation box for coffee on Sundays. So you'd fill up your cup and you'd drop a coin or $1 in, and they'd basically get like maybe $20 a week. When I changed to Cartel at the time, and then I changed a little bit of the hospitality component of it, I actually would hand people a cup and like welcome them to the church and, just kind of get to know them. Yeah. We went from, $30 to like $150, like right out the gate. And I was like, there's something to this, good product, great hospitality. Okay. So, over the next 6 months, they ended up hiring me full time. I came on staff, and they're like, hey, we really want to try to create this shop that's kind of the heartbeat of the community. We think you're the guy, and we'd love to basically bring you on full time to run us, a 7-day, we were at 6 days a week because I was the only person working. So 7 days a week, or 6 days a week, I came on, and I just kind of jumped right in, and I had no idea what I was doing. I kind of revitalized the shop a little bit. The menu, I really tried to give it, a different feel than what it had, and changed the furniture and tables and created a flow. And the next thing you know, like I was off to the races. Now, people didn't come by the huge crowds. I would maybe see, I kid you not, like maybe 6 people a day for the first couple months. 6 people a day, you're talking about from 6 to 5 or 6 to 6, whatever it was, 6 days a week. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like, what did I just do? And so I started to take that time. I really started to, for me, I started to pray. I was just like, if God is really God and who he says he is, for me, I I was like, well, not to say, I think people get to their faith journey, and, I'd grown up in the church and never really owned my own faith. It was just something that was a part of I was Catholic and, all that stuff. And I was like, okay. So the next thing you know, I'm becoming incredibly curious about coffee. And the first kind of real jump for me was I had this kind of vision. I was actually driving the Cartel, and I thought about like the product itself, and I'm like, well, where does it come from, and who's, who are the people involved in the process, and what is even coffee? And I didn't even know at the time that coffee was a fruit. It was a cherry, and the beans that we get, there's like most varietals of cherries have two beans, and they're basically smashed up together. And I was like, wow, that's fascinating. So I just kept digging and digging and digging. And I was like, you know what? I think I'm supposed to start something where I'm involved with the people from, far away. And the more I did my research, it was like, before I had gotten into golf and I was doing ministry, I was traveling internationally, and I was drawn to like third world countries. I was drawn to this idea of poverty that, not to go and change people, but to make a difference. I'm what you would call a healthy version of a disruptor. I like to look into different parts and industries where I see things that are wrong, and I don't just take that as we need to change. I really want to understand what's causing the problems that are creating, the end result. So in coffee, I saw this vision of like us using it as a tool to build community, but also create sustainability through microfinancing and relationship buying with consistency over time. Well, come to find out, so a funny story from that, I've got this great idea for this company, and all the details, I'm like, there's just no way. I call one of my really good buddies, and I'm like, Joel, do you think I'm crazy? And I tell him like the whole spiel. And the first thing out of his mouth is, he's like, first of all, you're not that creative. And I was like, awesome.
Just what I need to hear.
Creative. He's like, no. And he's like, I gotta be honest with you. I've never seen you so excited and passionate about something that you've got like at least a roadmap all the way across the board. And he said, the answer is really simple. He said, it's either you say yes or you say no. And he's like, I'm going to leave you with that. And I was like, well, that's not what I was looking for. And so I went back to the drawing board, and I kind of asked myself this question. I'm like, well, what do I have to lose? So I said yes. And I just basically started sharing this vision with people. And the first kind of person was a guy who was a pastor on campus. And I just said, hey, what do you think about this if we started like potentially reaching out to farmers in third world countries? I mean, this was before like direct trade was a big deal. I mean, fair trade was kind of starting, like the whole idea of conceptual of like this, from seed to cup. The process itself was more of a marketing tool. There wasn't a lot of people but a direct trade kind of process the way that I envisioned it, meaning like when you talk about relationship buying, there's a lot of transparency, there's consistency. It's not based on like, oh, you had a great harvest this year and you had a bad harvest, I'm only going to buy when you have a great harvest type of mentality. It was like, no, we're in it for the long run, and we've done that over the last 10 years. So, we jumped into it, and I told Mark Zarowski was his name. And he was like, dude, he's like, I don't know if this is helpful or not, but I met a guy on an airplane when I was in Guatemala. And he was like, it was like 7 years ago, but here's his name. And I'm like, okay. So I go to Facebook and I type his name, and there he was, like, holy smokes. So I send him this like really neurotic, like passionate filled, response to him. Like, oh my gosh, I hear you're working with farmers in the northern region of Quiche, and I heard you have a faith background and you work with nonprofits. So I'm just like this kid in the candy store. I'm super like excited. And he's like, yeah. It was just like a really short answer, like, yes. And I was like, wait, like, that's it?
I asked for 12 questions. Yes to what? Which one?
I was like, and so I said, hey, do you have time to take a call? And I kept pursuing him. I'm very persistent. I think it comes from kind of my sales background. I'm like, when I see something and I'm like, okay, I mean, obviously if it's not going to happen, it's not going to happen, but sure. I'm going to give my best effort to try to accomplish something.
Nice.
And I just told him my heart. And he's like, you know what, if you're serious, I'll see you in a couple months. Like, book a flight and come here. And I was like, yeah. Done. Yeah. And that's what I did. I booked a flight. Nice. I took my business partner and we flew to Guatemala. and the rest was history. I mean, that was my first origin trip. And that's where like kind of the vision, we hadn't even had the name yet. It was like the coffee project, I think is what I originally called Provision. It was just like the coffee project. And when we were there for the 11 days, we got of how coffee really, worked. And specifically in a third world country, I mean, I'd never been to a Taco Bell where the guy has an M16. And we, an 8-hour car ride that was basically, would be like a trip from here to Tucson because there was like 375 road bumps going out of Guatemala City. We saw 2 dead bodies, got pulled over 7 times. It was just like, wow, this is a very different world.
Yeah.
And I just started, this is not like abnormal. This is the normal for coffee farmers. And if they don't have the resources. So that trip really gave me an insight to what the rest of the company has been built on. And we've gone back several times, and now we work in 9 different countries with the same model. But essentially, what started was basically by definition. So the cool thing about the story of Provision, or I should say the name of Provision, it really came from, I basically told the definition of provision to one of my best friends. And he's like, dude, that's provision. He's like, to basically supply needs. And I wanted to use coffee as a tool to supply people for food, water, healthcare, education, this whole kind of like gamut of things. He's like, that's provision. And he was smart enough to be like, hey, he had a business degree and was like, look it up. Is it available? And he's like, it is. And then we got the trademark on it. And like, I had no idea like any of that stuff. Thankful that he went to business school and was like, look, if this name's available, you have to take it and you need to own it like ASAP. So it was one of the best things that we've ever done. And so I sat on the name for probably 5-6 months, literally thinking I was not going to even do it anymore. After I'd gone on the trip, I was like, I'm ready to go home.
Meaning like not do the coffee thing anymore, or do that approach to coffee?
No, just coffee in general. I mean, I kind of hit a point where, we were very stagnant and we had all this information. Starting a business, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. All the things that kind of come with it, and then let alone like importing coffee and then roasting coffee. And I mean, mind you, we looked like a roasting company in the matter of like 6 months, which we had no business like even being a part of it. But it was every time we had something that we needed, somebody in the community was like, hey, we'd meet somebody and they're like, oh, that's amazing that you want to do that. And they provided an opportunity for us. So I roasted out of Cortez Coffee for about 5 years. Ron Cortez has been one of the OG coffee roasters in Arizona. Crazy Costa Rican guy. Just love him. He's such a good dude. He's just like, yeah. So we rented time once a week, and I'd come in there and I'd use all of his equipment and basically ghost roast like I was my own roasting company. It was wild. So it was interesting to see the progressions, and even thinking about it right now. Like, I don't think about this stuff all the time. When you ask like, hey, we're going to talk about provision, I'm like, oh gosh, I don't know what's going to come out today.
Sure.
Lots.
So far so good, Lawrence. You're doing great, man. So, hey, so let's jump back real quick, because it's something that, I don't think a lot of people understand is the coffee situation, right? The fair trade, and like you were saying, direct trade, and all of these really bad things going on of people being, what is, I would say in a nutshell, what does the coffee world look like now from that perspective? If that makes sense.
To date right now, it's really fascinating because, so coffee, first of all, is a commodity. It's traded on the stock market. Big coffee companies buy spot coffee, basically lots from all over the world, and it basically is dictated by a price. So, when you look at, when you hear things like fair trade or direct relationship buying, they're all different things. But everybody kind of puts them into one category because coffee's it's so internationally known. I mean, it's one of the most sought out commodities in the world. I mean, it goes between, you hear like it's number 2 or number 5, or it goes back. It's always been like the number 1 consumption product around the world. So when you think about that in terms of like the retrospect of coffee itself, it's very like broad. So the specialty market, the market that we're in, focuses on a very small niche market of small farmers who basically don't have the ability to farm coffee at a level that maybe a big finca would. We really try to focus on smaller farmers, smaller production lots, to enstable, or to create sustainability, because in third world countries, there's lots of these farmers who work for other farms, but also have a small portion of their own land because they're very passionate about their third, fourth, fifth generation farmers who love what they do. And so let me just explain a couple different factors of what that looks like. So a fair trade coffee transparency was a big deal for people who were realizing that coffee was grown in third world countries. It was a very sore subject for a lot of people because nobody really knew. It was kind of like whiskey. Nobody really knew what was like behind the scenes. You know, when High West kind of came out and was doing, like, every whiskey guy in the country was like, "Are you kidding me? Like, I can't believe you just gave away the biggest secret." Well, the dirty secret in coffee is that, you know, there was people who were they're basically paid like almost like slave labor. To use the word slave, I think is appropriate in some sense. Like, people are laboring for coffee and they're only getting like a very small portion of what the market was dictating in terms of price. Gotcha. So that bothered me. I mean, and coffee farming is not easy. I mean, you're literally talking about the majority of coffee farmers are picking one berry at a time. Wow. Through selection. Some will do a drag, but that's not effective because not all of the fruit is ripe. So there's different ways and kind of perspectives and views on that.
Yeah.
So as a whole, you have an industry that's driven by commodity, which is also driven by poor labor kind of costs and transparency to farmers. And a lot of people who we call them like coyotes, basically would go to smaller farmers and say, "Hey, we'll pay you, you know, $1 per pound for your coffee." And they might sell it on the market for $3 or $4, depending on what it was. And some of them wouldn't even come back. So there was this weird kind of process happening where people were going out and buying coffee and not basically paying farmers what they were worth. So that really bothered me. And, you know, fair trade obviously was trying to do a really good job, I think, of being transparent in the process, and kind of it basically, you know, it led me to ask a bunch of questions. And it still exists today, and it's still a good organization, but do I think it's the end all be all? Absolutely not. I think, you know, what we're trying to do in terms of relationship buying is, you know, in my market specifically, you know, we literally represent about 5% of the world's best coffees. We're in a sector of coffee. Coffee is basically scored on a level of 0 to 100. To make it really easy for viewers, is that, you know, to be considered a specialty coffee, you need to get a score of at least 82 on a cupping table. And basically all that means is that coffee has the body, the acidity, the aromas. Like, there's a basic profile that we're looking for that would categorize a coffee as an 82 or plus. Most of the coffees that we sell from Provision are 85 to 87, just depending. And that's a very, very small. I mean, when you look at all the coffees that are produced in the world, it's very difficult to get that quality. And that's where relationship buying comes in. So I have a business partner in San Francisco. His name is Kevin Boland. He owns a company called St. Frank. Him and I met about 3 years ago, and basically, when I left Guatemala, I had this really big vision to build a company, and I didn't get to travel as much as I did. We both started around the same time. He just traveled a ton. He was going to all of these countries doing what I wanted to do, to really focus on relationship buying. Well, we realized that one of the things that we lacked was resources to be able to do this ourselves. So this is actually the second year, we're moving coffee together independently from other brokers to do relationship buying. And we've been able to basically create another company to help fuel us as roasters to finance coffee so that we can pay above market pricing consistently across the board. And relationship buying is difficult. So I'll give you a great example so people can understand this. Burundi is one of the poorest regions, or one of the poorest countries in Africa and in the world. Burundi, Africa. I've got a really good friend from a coffee company called Long Miles Coffee. And Ben and his wife, Christy, moved to Burundi to basically, he was buying green coffee for other coffee commodity companies. And he realized Burundi, that Burundi was this place that nobody was really paying attention to. They had really, really great, fruitful Bourbon varietal of coffee. And he just said to his wife, hey, we're going to move to Burundi and we're going to make a difference in coffee. And she was just kind of like, oh, okay. I mean, you're talking about like a war zone. I literally was on a call with him when Burundi was going through a civil war, and you could hear guns in the background. He's like, oh, yeah, they're just down the mountain, just fighting it out. I'm like, I mean, a third world country. I'm like, wow, why would you do this? Well, so we fell in love with his vision, which basically was Burundi had essentially at the time had, hopefully I'm giving, a good depiction of what this is, because this is a perfect example of coffee's story. Governments are a big part of how coffee is moved in and out of every country. It's very different in every country and can be very difficult. Or like Guatemala, it's a little bit more put together and a lot easier to get coffee out of the country. But Burundi was basically under a landlock. So up until that point where Ben was there, you could not produce coffee and basically sell it without the government's permission. So basically they release land. Ben comes in, he opens a washing station, and mind you, you got this, this white boy moving to Burundi, Africa, in the middle of like a third world country that's going through a war zone, trying to basically recruit farmers to bring coffee cherries to his washing station so that he could teach them and also pay them more. And they were like, "You're crazy. We want nothing to do with you."
Even the farmers. So even because the farmers knew that they're like, dude, this is not a good situation.
Who are you? You're just another guy looking to buy our coffee that essentially could take advantage of us. So once he found out that they were paying cash for cherries when people would come to the washing station, they created this really incredible transparency thing. And then they started creating education. So they noticed the inconsistencies in the coffee that was coming to the farms. They would have undeveloped cherries, or there'd be these little tiny holes inside of the cherries, which would create what was called like a potato defect in coffee. Well, there's a beetle in Burundi, which is one of the reasons why, a lot of people didn't like coffee from Burundi, because it had this starchy aftertaste in the cup. So you wouldn't see it in the specialty market. And he's like, dude, if we could get rid of this beetle, we could actually make this coffee like phenomenal. So I trusted him. And so essentially I bought my first pallet of coffee from Burundi, I believe in, let's go back in time here. I want to say it was 2014, I believe, or 14 or 15, one of those years. And I paid $5.29 per pound. Mind you, this coffee was barely an 82. It was not good. It was super starchy, and I bought a lot of it. And I bought a lot of it because I'm like, if we really believe in this story and there is the ability to get better coffee, this is a perfect example of relationship buying. So second year comes around, he decided to basically hire the kids of Burundi, and he calls them coffee scouts. And he would basically give them scooters, and he would teach them about this particular beetle, and they would be pulling the beetles off of the coffee plants in all of the area where they were working in, these regions where these washing stations were at. The next thing you know, harvest comes around and the cupping score is starting to go up, and they're realizing they're having a huge impact. And guess what? Now they don't have like only 5 farmers, they have thousands of farmers showing up, and they've got to create another washing station. And so all of a sudden, this idea of actually giving people more, paying them more of what they were quote unquote worth was really driving value home. And the next thing you know, Ben is one of the most sought out Burundi coffee producers. And he's been, I forget the International Beverage Award. Him and his wife won it, I think like in 2017. And just to see the work that they basically put their hands down to the plow. And I mean, it sounds glorious and awesome right now, but I can promise you, we had phone calls where he was crying. He had to move his family out of the country for safety. It was a war zone trying to do something and eradicate this idea of poverty and create a sustainability. Mind you, his coffee is sold in the highest, in specialty coffee, George Howe, Blue Bottle, Stumptown, Intelligentsia, all these guys buy Ben's coffee now. The beautiful part is because we've stuck by him relationally year after year, Provision Coffee and myself at Kevin from St. Frank, because Ben, the relationship we have with him and adopting him and this relationship model, I get first picks on those coffees before those guys do. Even if they go to Origin, like Ben will basically say, hey, you've been with us you believe in what we're doing, and you continue to buy coffees from us and see the bigger vision and supporting us. And that's essentially the whole philosophy of relationship buying is that it's more cost up front, but in the long term, it really pays its dividends. And not only does it pay in the quality side of things, but it pays to show people what they're worth.
Sure.
If you were to ask, what I really believe in is I believe in empowering people to give them the resources they need to be able to do good and to be able to create whatever they need in doing that. So resources are a huge thing, and people matter. So when you actually start to show that, this is a perfect example of what relationship buying is. So that was that one step further from fair trade. Fair trade was like, hey, we'll give you some more money. We'll try to make it transparent.
Yeah.
Relationship buying, direct trade buying is, hey, we believe in you. We're going to invest in you. And we're not just going to buy coffee when you're producing the best coffees. We're going to buy coffees from here on out. So as long as they continue to buy coffee or farm coffee, we will have that relationship ongoing with them. And that's what we believe in relationship buying. There's a term in specialty coffee called cherry picking. I think you've probably heard this term before. Well, there's a lot of roasters who just want to buy the best coffees in the world. And honestly, I don't have a problem with that, other than is that it leaves people who didn't produce the best coffee this year. What that means that they can't support their family this year. It goes against everything that I believe. So as a whole, that's kind of in a nutshell, like that's coffee and the difference between fair trade and relationship buying. And, commodity is just a whole nother sector that's really complicated, but it's all based on contracts. And it's all based on volume and how many containers can you move. And most of the time, depending on the region, it's like, these are big established business. You'll see people from the UK with lots of money in different areas of the world that run and basically hire outside work to come into their farms that they've bought to produce commodity coffee. I mean, they're producing 10, 15, 20 containers of coffee. Well, we work with people who produce, 1 to 10 bags.
Yeah.
To give you like a reference of what that looks like. So
yeah.
I'm super passionate. Small guy and creating consistency and hopefully making a difference. And I think that over time, I mean, we're turning 10 years and I think we're just getting started. We're just now starting to see it takes a long time to develop a process and to really kind of get to know how to do things well. And coffee is one of those businesses that has a very interesting romantic kind of draw to it. And everybody thinks that they can do it because they oversimplify it. But once you get into it and you realize how complicated it really is, it scares a lot of people away. And it's definitely gotten the best over the years.
Yeah. Yeah. But you seem like a dude that can dive deep in, man. Like you seem to be enjoying this a lot.
Just depends on the day.
Sure. Yeah. That's everything, right?
I feel called to what I do. I mean, from running a retail to now running an international buying company, like I'm essentially, in charge of our contracts and our financing components. As an entrepreneur, I didn't realize I was an entrepreneur, by the way. I just thought I loved things and needed to sell them. And over the years, I have realized how crazy I really am in my own brain. I'm the guy that walks into a store and is like immediately like, that's a great idea. I think I can do that. And I don't only think it, like I start doing it. And it's just this weird hobby that has turned into more of a reality for me. And so naturally, I try to keep that within, the context of knowing that I have responsibilities in running a company and being
sure.
a father. I'm very available, but I'm all in. There's no doubt about it. I'm all in. And on the bigger level in Phoenix, I think passion is really driving our industry. The people who are making a difference, they're not just good at what they do. I mean, they really believe in people, and they believe in the products, and they want to make a difference. And I mean, you talk about a storm that we're in right now. It's wild, but I will tell you, it's been very interesting to see the retail side of our store in Arcadia. I thought for sure we wouldn't break $1,000 a day. I thought for sure when this thing hit, we would be toast, and we would only be a matter of months, depending on how long this epidemic would last. And we haven't lost a penny. And I think it just goes back to the people philosophy. One of the things that, even though I mean, there's so much complexity. You know, you said dive deep. Like I do dive deep. There are layers to this conversation that I could go on for hours. But the people and the amount of time and the heart and the love that goes into what we do, and how that really transpires to the customer, you know, it's like, I think we really put our money where our mouth was. And I'm a big believer, you reap what you sow. And I had no idea how me starting on a little coffee shop and getting the right team to creating a store and a concept and a brand, how that would actually be put to test. You know, none of us ever expected to go through this season.
Sure.
Look at it from a numbers standpoint now and realize like we've made it through this epidemic with so much grace, but also because of the people who we've affected and the customers and the support. I mean, that's back to that reap what you sow. And I know it hasn't been as fortunate for a lot of other people in our industry, and it breaks my heart. And not to say that they didn't care about people, but I think it's really a testament to how deep we are in our company and how we think through things and how we discipline ourselves to set the standard really, really high for our partners and what we do. So, yeah, I mean, I keep going on these rabbit trails, but I think that you kind of get the idea of where that kind of comes from.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And I was going to ask you too, right, with your focus on the hospitality side of it, right, of you wanting to hand somebody their coffee and talk to them. Now, 6 months into it, you're not allowed to get close to people. You can't see them talking, right? Has that been a little bit of an adjustment for you on that side?
Huge. We literally have just spent the last 3 weeks. We've got a training tomorrow evening with our team because we will be opening up on the 15th. And obviously we have different kind of standards in place. And, I wanted to open up months ago and realize that, I had to ask my team how comfortable they were, and they weren't comfortable. So I just said, look, I'm not interested in trying to make money, but I want to make sure that we can still maintain a business and a healthy balance. And it's kind of gotten to that place where, we see things that are changing. We've watched Arizona Health Department, very, close eyed. I mean, my manager, Jennifer, she's on it every single day. She's looking at the numbers, and, it's been difficult to try to process through it. But as a team, we just started asking the questions, like, what are some of the things that you guys are seeing? How do we adapt to a new culture with, you can't see half of my face. Like, what does that actually look like? 'Cause hospitality is all about, as I watch you ordering something, I can say like, oh, you're having a good day, or man, he's got a tough one. Like it's not good today, or that person is very difficult. So now you've got like this, and that a lot of that comes from facial recognition.
Yeah.
So we've just gone through this. We went through a 3-week kind of in-depth, like what can we do as the hospitality company to change that? And so we're doing fun little kind of things that engage people. But communication is still huge. When you engage with somebody, one of my biggest things in coffee is that we're definitely coffee nerds, and we love all the things specialty. But my biggest thing as I traveled is that there was this kind of pretentious vibe with specialty coffee, where it was like, if I asked for cream or sugar and I went into a third wave coffee shop and I'm like, wow, excuse me, I just paid $5 for coffee. I would love cream in my coffee. And that type of mentality. And I tell my team all the time, like, sometimes we get a little too carried away. I think it could even happen in any kind of craft thing. You kind of get over the customer and you think you have too much information or you're much smarter and I don't know. Well, guess what? I'm still your patron. So at the end of the day, you have to realize, like, whether you know a lot or know a little, my whole thing has always been communication. So I've really been focusing on the hospitable, back to the basics. We're diving deeper into like engaging, like eye to eye, like I see you, you see me. Hey, it's really good to see you again. Or I'm teaching my team how to remember people. We have so many regulars at Arcadia, and it's amazing to hear the stories as I was going through with the team. Like, tell me some stories of some positive feedback and some negative feedback. And one of my assistant managers was telling me about this particular gal, and she always would come in so bubbly. And one of my baristas finally just said, it's so lovely to see you. Like, you always come with this amazing smile. And I'm just so happy to see you. Like, she was genuinely like, and she was like, oh my gosh. And every time she comes back now, she's just like excited to see the team. And I'm like, look, I know it's a little different difficult and it can be awkward, but we're not transactional. And I think that even now, as a culture, it's super, super important to see people where they are, because we all need a little extra attention and we do need people to love on us. And even if that's through, like, from our humble standpoint of like, we're going to serve you the best cup of coffee that we can possibly give you without giving you all the details that we just gave you, just basically letting you know that we appreciate you, we value you, and we know that you are here for a reason so that we can serve you. And we want to do that well. So we're literally back to the basics. Tomorrow, we've got like a 2-hour intensive. I'm surprising the team with some pokey, like make it your own bowls. And then we're going to jump right into like, hey, how do we basically how do we go against the trend of what COVID is creating? How do we make people happy? How do we make people kind of like a Chick-fil-A? You know, I love Chick-fil-A because they just, I mean, even when I don't want to say like, you know, I don't want to go through the happy greeting or the, like, you know, what's their famous saying?
My pleasure.
Come to me. Anyways, what's that?
Yeah.
Is it my pleasure? Is that what you're talking about?
My pleasure. Yes. It's just, I mean, it's, but it's like, wow, even if the kid doesn't even mean it, I'm like, it's such a unique 2-word that I mean, it's genius, because as an organization, that organization stands behind that. It really is their pleasure to serve you. And they do, I mean, even through COVID, like the standards that they set, you know, the employee, you can always tell a company by its employees. I mean, they've got like 15, 20 people running around and you never see them like really distraught, which is amazing to me.
Yeah.
And they are constantly busy. I mean, I don't know how much money flows through their door on a day, but I mean, I can tell you it's a lot. And it's a lot of people, and it's just a beautiful thing. So we're getting back to the basics. We're going to teach people just to engage and go a little bit over the top. So that's one of the biggest ways we're countering the COVID. We don't have all the answers. It's definitely, we don't always have the best customers sometimes. And honestly, my philosophy is kill them with kindness. And if they continue to be rude, we refuse them to you know, like, hey, this isn't your place. We're really sorry. Thanks for the bad Yelp review. So. Yeah,
right. Exactly. For the 3, I know it was you in 3 different accounts. You signed up with different accounts. Yeah. So Lawrence, what is and you know, obviously with the current situation, we don't know what's going on next week, but there's yeah, for sure.
Yes, guy. Do you need my signature? Yep. Yeah. Jarvey, Jarvey. Thank you. Sorry, UPS. Nobody's here but me.
No worries, man.
What were you saying?
So what's the vision? I mean, what's the outlook for Provision at this point? I mean, I know COVID is obviously throwing a wrench in everything and we can't plan anything, but where do you want to see this go?
Well, that's a very interesting question. We had planned to open 5 stores prior to COVID. And we had leases in play, we had locations picked out, and we've basically pulled all of that back. And essentially, I mean, we've lost more. I mean, we're a retail company and we're a wholesale company. We've lost 85% of our wholesale because we support restaurants and cafes in the Valley. So our goal right now, as we basically approach COVID, is that there's a lot of people that are closing down, and we're really not trying to like take over accounts, but we're really just trying to see where people need, like where we can actually meet the needs. We're not aggressive in our sales tactic. Like I like to, you know, be sought out in some way. You know, we serve some of the best coffee in town, hands down, and I know that not just because I'm saying that, but I know where it comes from, and I cup a lot of coffees from around the world. I know a lot of the coffees where people buy them from. I can honestly say that we buy some of the best coffees in the world. The most transparency. And I think that, you know, that message of us, I've never told the story of Provision. So many people come through my store and they see this amazing, they'll call it bougie, or it's architecturally like beautiful. I mean, all those things are part of our philosophy. My goal in this last quarter of this year, as we move into the new season, my vision is to tell that story. And people, you know, I always wanted to create a company that wasn't about me. You know, a lot of people don't even know who I am. And that's beautiful to me. I mean, my business partner has 2 kind of different philosophies. One is he really believes in excellence, as do I. And I think that, you no matter what's going on and whether it's a bad day or a good day, excellence will basically not persistent. Excellence will win is kind of what it comes down to. And I think people need excellence. And so our goal is to be excellent at customer service, even in the midst of having masks on, even in the midst of having less tables. Our goal is to be excellence in telling our story. By definition, we've got a beautiful story that a lot of people don't even know to tell. Just listen to a podcast with Guy Rao and the creators from La Cologne. And if you haven't listened to, if you don't listen to How I Built This, he talks about La Cologne, and La Cologne is the milk, the nitro milk coffee drink, which in a can is honestly his froth creation patent that he has on that is honestly one of the best specialty coffee that I've ever had. Like if I'm on the road and I can't get a coffee, I can get La Cologne now. And to think about, you hear their journey, and it took them 10 years to open their second store. I think in our world of food and beverage, we have a tendency to look too fast, too quick when we start to see a little bit of success. This whole season of COVID has slowed us down to say, what are we good at? How do we get better? And what does that look like? Opportunity knocks on your door when you're the best. So not to say that my competitors or my fellow peers aren't good at what they do, but I want us to be known as the best, and I want people to know why we're the best. And I don't think that's the point of arrogance. I think we all should have that goal. Like we can all be the best in some categories. It's not this kind of pretentious, like I'm going to stand on the hill, I'm better than you. Right. It's almost the posture you just did. It's like, I know you.
Yeah. Stretching my back a little bit. You're right though. Yeah.
It's not like I'm the best. It comes more from the ethos. Why do we look into the details? If you look at our menu online, my team's done an incredible job of trying to source the best in Arizona. Working with Wilderness, I think John has one of the best stories in basically navigating through the Arizona narrative. How do we bring more business back to Arizona? How do we employ people in Arizona to empower people in Arizona? I'm a huge proponent of that. I love big commodity markets, and I love that we can have big companies, but you and I both know that, and we're seeing it more than ever, this country is built on small businesses. And as we as people don't put our best foot forward, we're going to go out of business. And it's hard. It's very hard, and it's very challenging. And I can see why people give up. It's not for the faint at heart. Food and beverage is, a lot of the times I talk to my wife and I'm like, I can't believe I'm still in this business. And then I have those moments, I go to a restaurant and I'm like, I'm such a sucker for this. Like I'm so sold out on watching people. And my pastor, who's a really good friend of mine, he's like, dude, you just have a heart for hospitality. Like you come to my house, like I'm going to make you dinner, and I've got an amazing whiskey selection, and I'll have us cigars ready to go. And it's not like I'm trying to show off. Like I just want to give my best, what I love. And I think do it out of a place of authenticity. It trumps bullshit all day long. And that's really what I want our company to do. I don't say I want to be the best for an award. I want to be the best so that people know why, that it's coming from a place of authenticity. Because I believe that when we are authentic, when we're transparent, and when we are the best version and we're doing it in excellence, that's contagious. Like it is incredibly contagious. And it's the story that we're all we need positive stories right now, because man, I woke up this morning and I didn't want to get out of bed. It was like the AC guy, and then my wife, and then my director of wholesale. And then I've got an invoice to pay, and it's a lawyer, and it's this. And I'm just like, oh my God. Somebody unbelievably uncomfortable, but it's what I signed up for. So I gotta put my pants on just like you do. And I think at the end of the day, we need more people around us try to do it with excellence, and encouraging other people to do it in excellence too. Like I'm an open book. Like if people have questions on how I do, like one of my clients asked me what we did in sales, like sure, I'll tell you. It's not some hidden secret. You can actually go to where I file my taxes if you really want to know, and look up the numbers. There's ways to look at what people that's part of being an entrepreneur. You figure things out. But at the end of the day, like we really are an open book. I want to set a standard. We're not exclusive. We are inclusive, and we invite people to be at the table. And I had a client ask me what my purpose was a couple weeks ago. First time meeting this lady, new coffee shop, right? I mean, not my store in Arcadia. And she was like kind of grappling through like, are we going to be competitors? Like, how can we focus on them doing well and us doing well? And then she asked me, she said, what's your purpose? And I was like, wait, I thought I was selling you coffee.
You personally or Provision's purpose? Okay.
Me personally.
Yeah.
And I was like, but trying to give her some answer. And she's like, that's not your purpose. I was like, you're right. It's not my purpose. Okay. And I was like, can I get back to you on that? And she was like, yeah, I'm going to give you homework and we're going to talk about it in 2 weeks. And I literally thought about that for, hours. I would be like, what's my purpose? What's my purpose? I start writing stuff down. No, that's not my purpose. That's just an effect. No, that's a vision. No, that's a goal. That's a desire. And I finally realized like my purpose as a human and as a father and as a husband is that I am driven by hospitality and serving people. So I want to be able to be impactful in my purpose, which is to serve my community and to serve it well. And it so happens that I get to do that through coffee and cocktails in my company. And then when you come to my house, I get to be, a servant. You get to be a guest in my house and I get to serve you well. And for my children, it's like I get to serve them as a capacity as being their father and as my, as being a husband. It's like that's another duty that I think that like that's what I see as my purpose. And whatever opportunity comes towards me in my life and my company through that, like I'm excited for that or whatever the opposition is, but I'm still going to stand behind like we're a company that serves people and we serve people well.
Dude, love it, man. That was a great wrap up, Lawrence. Lawrence Jarvie, Provision. Dude, that was great, man. This was a great episode. Thank you so much for talking with us and sharing all this, man. This is a great, just a great wrapped up kind of mindset of just doing what you're doing, man. I don't know if that makes sense, but I think,
I'm honored to get the invitation, and my business partner basically has challenged me to like start doing more podcasts and talking to people, because essentially you guys have viewers who have probably had Provision Coffee and they've had no idea the blood, sweat, and tears and the story. I mean, it's a beautiful story. So, back to your question, I want to tell that story well. And I want other people in food and beverage to know, like, your desire, your passion to do well doesn't need to stop because there's an epidemic. Yes, there are definitely conditions. This isn't any different than any time in history. It's just something that we're all focusing on. And it happens to be, there's a whole political thing we won't even get into. But at the end of the day, we as people still need people to survive. We are not designed by nature to be to exclude ourselves from the rest of the world and go and die in a hamster hole. Like, that is not how we were created. Whether you're religious or not, like there's something. Why do we go to parties? Why do we go to restaurants? It's because we want to share community. Now, whether you've actually defined that and said, hey, this is my purpose, or this is my mission, or this is my mantra, or whatever that is, it's innate inside of you. And it's why parties go longer than they're ever expected, because people start letting their guard down. The next thing you know, you're like, hey, you've got a podcast. That's amazing. What do you do? Tell me about your family. All of a sudden you got this common denominator, passion explodes. And the next thing you know, you're having a conversation. And we need more conversations. We need more people to talk about the good stuff, the bad stuff, the indifferent, and let's raise the bar in Phoenix. Like, to end on this note is that I love that you're talking to people who have stories, and that's people don't have no idea. Because if you don't take the initiative, a lot of us business owners, the daily kind of grind of whatever we're doing. I would encourage you guys, keep getting more people to tell their stories, because as a business owner, it's flattering to be able to tell the story, but it's also encouraging to know that people are doing it for the sake of like spreading the good news of Arizona. So
yeah,
hats off to you guys for being consistent and wavering off the beer path and kind of getting into the coffee tribute a little bit and food and beverage. I love it, man.
Absolutely, man. Well, dude, it was our pleasure. Absolutely.
Well, guys, there you have it. Another episode in the books, this time with Lawrence from Provision Coffee. Make sure to follow Taste of AZ on social media. See you next time.